Most people don't think of 1864 as a year to remember here in Augusta. 1916 had its famous fire. 1934 marked the first Masters tournament. And in 1970, we had a riot. However, 1864, 150 years ago, was a pivotal year in that it started one way and ended another, with us heading in a direction most didn't want to go. According to the Chronicle, on January 3rd, 1864, the town was flooded. Flooded all the way down here to what is now James Brown Boulevard. We call it 9th Street. They called it Campbell. And I will tell you that if it was flooding on this street, people were not only getting wet, but the 12,000 or so Augusta residents were getting muddy. That's right, in 1864, Augusta had all dirt streets. In June 1864, the Chronicle editor, Nathan Morse, began to spend a lot of effort defending himself. According to some, he had much to defend. As a Southern editor, this displaced Yankee soon revealed himself to be thoroughly despicable and absolutely lacking in any lasting loyalty, a later historian wrote. We have no photo of Morris. He's described as having a mustache and a round face. We can only speculate at what he might have looked like. Halfway through the year, and the news gets worse. General Sherman and his Yankee army had captured Atlanta. General W.H.T. Walker, one of Augusta's favorite sons of one of its most prominent families, was killed during the Atlanta fighting. And Sherman is moving east, and everyone is beginning to worry. And then, on August 28th, disaster. An explosion at the powder works kills 9 when 18,000 pounds of powder explodes. And in the middle of all this war and all this destruction, what was the big news story in Augusta? Burglars. Yes, Sherman's thinking about coming to town. People are worried. They're building up the fort. But Sherman never attacks. Why? Well, 24 years after the war, Chronicle editor Pleasant Stovall wrote and asked him. Speculation had led to many theories over the years. For most of the Southern men, it was obvious. Sherman was afraid of the Augusta defenders. The women, on the other hand, had a lot more to say. They thought that Sherman had been persuaded by a young woman that he had once courted when he had been a federal officer at the Augusta Arsenal. No one knew. Finally, Editor Stovall showed the initiative that others had lacked and wrote to the famous old general. And what do you know? The famous old general, then 68, wrote back in what one might call the most famous letter to the editor ever published in the Chronicle. Basically, Sherman said he didn't attack Augusta because he didn't have to. It suited him perfectly well that all its defenders stayed inside and he could march unrestricted to Savannah to be resupplied. The year is winding down. Sherman's not going to attack. They pretty much had figured that out by December. So guess what the big problem is? It's still the burglars. They broke into St. Paul's and took the carpeting. They broke into First Presbyterian and stole the communion table. The Chronicle again called for more policemen, as if there were any who weren't fighting in the war. The year ends with the generosity that Augusta has long been known for when Mayor May commends T.S. Metcalf for giving $20,000 for poor widows and orphans. And on the last day of the year, Chronicle editor Nathan Morse writes his January 1st editorial for 1865, expressing a desire for peace through negotiation. So let's review. We had a flood, we had a war, we had burglars, we had General Sherman, and we had some generosity. In other words, the worst of times, the best of times, and the trying times of 1864.